Welcome to the Fill Your Cups podcast. We're your hosts, Morgan
and Bailey.
Hey everybody, we are so excited to be back with another episode of the show. Today it's almost like a mix of let's get deep and how to, but we really want to focus on the how to. We're going to give you some steps, tools, things that you can utilize whenever you enter tough conversations with loved ones, which obviously we all have that at some point.
Yes.
And it's been top of mind for me, which I can get into later a little bit more. But before we do that, what's filling your cup today?
Today, what's filling my cup is some iced coffee, which is actually so sweet because you made coffee this morning and then you put it in the freezer for me because you know I don't like hot coffee. So it was kind of prepared for me when I got here and it is so good.
Oh, good.
What is filling your cup?
Yay. I have a regular hot coffee.
Woo!
Yeah, a little bit of almond milk and stevia like yours.
Heck yeah. How many stevias do you put in yours?
2.
I almost only did 2. I ended up making it 3, but
yeah, I usually do 2. I like it sweet as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this time, my almond milk, I got like the unsweetened original instead of the unsweetened vanilla.
Oh yeah,
by accident.
Okay.
And it's not that much of a difference, but I feel like the vanilla makes it just a tad bit sweeter.
Yeah,
so,
maybe a little bit more extra.
Yeah, so I've been overcompensating a little bit.
Do you normally do like 1?
Yeah, and then I'll taste it, and if I don't, but today I did 2, like no questions asked, because I knew I would be missing the sweetness. But
yes, I think I told you about this one time. It might have been whenever we were doing the photo shoot with Easton, but I was saying that I usually get like 4 stevias or something. If I'm getting a grande coffee, it's like 4 stevias. If I'm getting a venti, I'll do like 5 or 6. And I think they think I'm stealing them. So they'll say like, okay, well, but we're going to put them in. I'm like, that's great. Like, please do. Like, stir it up, get it in there. I'm like, I'm not taking them. I swear, I want them.
Yes. One time I went to a coffee shop and it was Post Coffee Shop in the Colburn Library.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what exactly I ordered, but I was like, do you guys have stevia? And he said, yeah, do you want us to put them in? And I was like, either way. And then he actually told me that he usually grinds them, like mixes it into the coffee grounds or something.
Whoa.
I'm not sure. So that I couldn't tell a difference, but it was, I got an Americano and he put it like in the espresso, whatever thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have never thought about doing that, but now I wonder what that would be like.
I know. I almost felt like it would dull it, but
I
didn't notice any difference.
Weird. Yeah. All right. Well, enough about coffee. We have a really exciting shout out today.
Yes. So a couple weeks ago, we had our like kind of grand finale of our Women's History Month in March, and we took your guys' submissions for women in your life that inspire you. And we recorded on like a Wednesday night, and I gave everybody the deadline of that Wednesday night. And my poor friend Brittany submitted hers at like 10 p.m. that night. So we had definitely already recorded. I was like, oh, shoot. And since she submitted still and went through the effort of it, we wanted to still get the shout out.
Yes.
So her shout out was to her friend, Christina Hurtado. And I'm just going to read her words here. But she said that they are friends who met at work, a place for mom. Her husband actually found her and recruited her. LOL. And then she said, Christina's one of a kind. She's kind and outgoing, but also has a giving heart. Before I even knew about Community Blood Center, I knew that she donated platelets several times a year because her mom had passed away from cancer and needed platelets. She has a full-time job and works part-time at Athleta, but still is it Athleta or Athleta?
I don't know. I probably would have said Athleta, but I have actually no clue.
Okay. She has a full-time job and works part-time at that sports store, but still is on call to transport dogs who need to be rescued. Oh my gosh. She has 2 rescued corgis of her own, Archie and Walter, cute names, but still dedicates free time to those in need. She constantly advocates for fur babies because they have no voice.
Wow.
That's so sweet. And then I think this next one was about her favorite quality about her, which was she's just so fun and has the best heart. I've never met someone so kind. And then when we asked about what she wanted Christina to hear when she heard this shout out, she said, she deserves the world and I strive to be more like her. And then we did ask for stories, and she did include one.
Oh, I love these.
Yeah. She said, it's hard to pinpoint a single story about her. Every time I catch up with her, she is doing something for others. In October 2022, my oldest, Remy, and only child at the time, was a patient at Children's Mercy after having open heart
Holy
surgery.
shit.
I know, really scary.
Oh my God.
It's important to leave the room and get fresh air, but I didn't. Christina bought me her favorite coffee and breakfast from Mildred's. Christina does things like this for people every day. This isn't just one thing that she did. It got me out of my room for a few minutes because my nurse actually said she would hold Remy and keep him company. Christina hadn't even known me for very long, maybe a few months. At this time, I was just her work friend. LOL. She didn't do this for me because we were besties and she loved me so much. She did it because that's who Christina is.
Aww.
I bet she didn't even know that for my sanity, seeing my friend and getting some good food is just what I needed.
Oh, I love stories like that because it just goes to show the impact that you make on people that you don't even know.
I know.
That's so sweet. I strive to be like Christina.
Yeah, for sure. I love that so
amazing.
much. That's such a good shout out.
Such a good shout out. Yes. Thank you for submitting that anyway, Brittany, and Morgan. Thank you for reading it anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, it makes me so excited.
Yeah, I thought it was so fun. So thanks, Brittany. Shout out to Christina.
Yes.
We're so thankful to have women like that in our lives.
Yes. Do you guys make the world go round? That's going to be like my slogan.
I know.
Women make the world go round.
Yeah, it's really caught on.
I say it every time we talk about women. I'm like, oh, I love them. I love them. On to today's episode. Morgan had said earlier, it's kind of a let's get deep and a how-to mixed in one. I feel like it's like a deep conversation and a serious conversation, but it's the how to do it kind of thing. And like how to make, so we're going to be talking about basically having serious conversations with your loved ones.
Yes.
It kind of sounds like, and yeah, making those thoughts that you have inside your own head and the anxieties and the second guessings and the doubts and like being able to actually talk about them. And even if it's not that, but you're talking about money or a busy schedule or needing some extra love and attention, like sometimes those can really pile on you. And then you either don't talk about it and you explode, or when you do talk about it, you're kind of unprepared. And then it's like, oh yeah, name one time I did that. And then you freeze. Or it's like, you can't help but get really emotional, or someone storms out of the room and it's like, it never gets completed, or what's the word? It never resolved. Yes, it never gets resolved, and it never gets resolved correctly. So we're going to talk about how to do that and how to have those conversations.
Yeah, I think that, so this came to mind because recently I don't know, just feeling, I think I'm really stressed at work. I've been feeling, my emotions have been wearing kind of thin, and I've been feeling kind of like insecure, to be honest. And I felt like I needed to talk to Jared about like what was going on in my brain, because I was feeling all sorts of like negative feelings about what he must feel about me. Like, oh, I feel like I'm just a bother to him. I'm a nuisance to him. Like just really weird thoughts that I was having, that he wasn't necessarily doing anything to make me feel that way. But sometimes when you start on that train and then you find, we say this all the time on the podcast, but like your brain looks for evidence to support what it already believes.
Yeah.
And so if I'm already believing like, oh, my husband's like fed up with me or something like that, when he walks by me without saying hi or something, I'm gonna be like, see, oh my God, you know,
you were mad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And so that's just one example, but I had a girlfriend who was texting in our group chat last week, and it just was the weirdest timing because I had just talked to Jared about this like gotten some relief from it. Yeah. And she was texting, and she's a new mom, and she was talking about very similar feelings with her husband, which I'm sure that the added hormones and like sleep deprivation and stuff makes it even worse.
A whole new person who's part of the relationship.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But she was having some similar feelings about her husband. Like, oh, now he's stuck with me because I have a baby with them. And just these weird thoughts that pop into your head.
Yes.
And then every time you see or something happens that confirms that experience for you.
Yes.
Without the person even knowing, because
they have no idea.
They can't read your mind.
Yeah.
And they have no idea. So she was talking about that, and I was saying like, yeah, actually, I just recently I was like, I don't have the baby going on and all that, but I even had to have that kind of conversation. Like I had kind of a heart-to-heart with Jared recently about the same thing, and she was like, oh my gosh. And she was just like, I'm actually really proud of you that you did that, because in the reason that these conversations are so important, because sometimes those thoughts, like they can be really silly or whatever, and we could just dismiss them. Yeah. And some of them you very well can.
Yes.
But the reason having these conversations is so important is because it's like in the, you hear the phrase like what you want most versus what you want now. Like in the moment, it's very uncomfortable and I don't want to talk about that.
No, it sucks
kind of
every
thing.
single time.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I know that if we don't address these kinds of conversations, then it was exactly what you said. Like things will resurface and you'll never feel resolved and little resentments will pop up and stuff. And so even though I like this most recent time and any time that we were having this conversation, even though in my head I was like, I really wanted to just kind of put it off and like not talk about it. I was like, it's more, okay, what do I want most versus what do I want now?
Yeah.
And so, but I do feel like Jared and I have been together a long time now. And there have been some things that I've learned in conflict, even with like girlfriends and family members and stuff, that have helped me to navigate that a little bit better.
Yeah.
And honestly, that conversation went as well as it possibly could.
Yay!
So after that, I was like, okay, we need to talk about this on the podcast.
Yes.
Because it is so tough, but there are so many little ways that you can just make it that much better for you and way less daunting.
Yes, and everyone goes through it, so you're not alone. And I know for me, hard conversations are hard. I hate having them. I get so anxious about them. I start like talking myself out of why it's important. Or I go complete opposite and I talk myself into why it's really important and why it's a huge deal and why like I'm being victimized, just things like that. And I remember this was like, I feel like only like a year ago or something, which I'm so bad with timelines. So who actually knows? But I remember we were at our old house and Mason and I had recently been like bickering a lot. And we don't really do that very often. Like ever. But we had just really been bickering a lot for a couple days. And I remember he had been like, are you okay? Like, I just feel like everything I say, like you're snapping at, or everything I say, you're like having a different opinion or something like that. And I remember saying like, actually what I feel like it is that I am just not as afraid of confrontation as I used to be. And so I feel like when I am saying something, it's just because I have a right to say something. And like, it's now like I'm kind of sticking up for myself for like saying things that maybe I wouldn't have said before because I was going to be really scared it would lead into a argument or like a bickering match kind of thing. And I just remember thinking it was so funny because he was like, oh, like I never knew you felt like that. And we had been together a long time. And I was like, I didn't know that I felt like that until I was realizing I was censoring a lot of the things I was saying, or that I was like really controlling the things that I was saying because I didn't want to make you mad, or I didn't want to like make it a weird conversation every once in a while because I hate weird conversations. And so then like all of a sudden I just start doing it. And it's like because we've never had these conversations before. So I'm bringing up things from the past, or I'm bringing up like these little things that he does that I don't like. And he's like, what is going on? And I'm like, sorry, this is all like kind of happening at one time. But we did have a really big and really serious conversation about it. And I feel like ever since then, it has been so much easier to have conversations going forward and have like really productive conversations going forward. So I don't know. I don't think that that's a normal thing for everybody. But I actually remember telling a friend like, sometimes, or like, I have a really big problem with just saying the things that I actually feel. And she's like, I do not have that problem. And I was like, I would love to be like you.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that whether or not it's that conversation though, like when you do have a conversation like that, there's just an immense amount of relief.
Yeah.
And it
like,
does.
Wow.
Yeah. And you are just both more you both have more insight about what the other person needs and what the other person's feeling. Cause I feel like when you live with someone and you're with someone for a long time, you just you go into autopilot. And so you move around one another and like you have like connection points and stuff. But then once someone starts feeling a little bit weird about something, like a little bit negative about something or whatever, it's way easier to just continue going like through the motions and not address it. But then once you do address it, it's like, oh, actually, that took me off autopilot. Now I can pay more attention to what I'm doing and, helping that person. But that's also why I feel like it's important to utilize these. Like we've had a lot of serious conversations in our family too and stuff like that, or even like when you and I have had conflict or things like that, like there's things that you can do to help make it so that at the end you feel relieved and not like bursting again.
Yeah, and so that at the end you know that you still love each other, you know that you're going to be okay going forward, like you know that it's not going to be weird, because you don't want that out of a conversation. That's why you avoid the conversation.
Yeah,
because you're like, oh, this is going to suck, and like it's going to be really weird afterwards. But yeah, having the conversations in order to not make it weird or uncomfortable or like breaking up a friendship, like it's really important to know how to do that.
Yeah. So do we want to go into the how-tos?
Yeah, let's get in there.
So I started with, honestly, just some like mindset work. If, for instance, when I was feeling this way about Jared recently, like I had to remind myself that when you have, like when I have these intense feelings, when you have really intense feelings about someone, like you're feeling really hurt or you're feeling really emotionally, whatever, grieving about, or having a lot of
like anxiety.
Yeah, just having a lot of high intensity emotions.
Yeah.
That the reason that, or the place that is coming from is a place of you care so much for this person. Like you would not feel this upset if the cash register person at Walmart was doing the same thing, you know? Yeah. So like every time that, you know, Jared said something kind of short to me, I was like, see, he hates me, you know, in my brain, versus like if the Walmart cash register person was short with me, I would not think they hate me. I would just think like,
oh, they're having a bad day.
Yeah, exactly.
Move on.
Yeah, and honestly, I might not even think about it. I don't know. But yeah, so I do feel like the first step is honestly getting in the right mindset of, I do love this person. The reason that this feels so hurtful to me is because I care so much about what they think of me, and I care so much about our relationship. And I feel like just shifting yourself into that mindset instead of shifting like that helps you to go into the conversation on their team instead of as enemies or like I'm me against them. It's like,
yes, you go into it like, let's work this out instead of let's fight.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. That's a good mind shift set. I have literally never thought about that before.
Yeah, I don't know. I also think like we're probably just getting older, and so we're getting better at conflict.
Yeah,
but
a little more mature.
Yeah, but I do think that some things like that are a good reminder. And then one thing that I hear in another podcast that I listen to all the time is reminding yourself, like, are you putting this person on a pedestal? For instance, there are people in our lives that we think, oh, you know, my husband, I'm going to hold him to a much higher standard than a Walmart cash register person.
Right.
And obviously, like, that is a different relationship. I expect Jared to treat me differently than that person.
Yes.
But there are some expectations that we start to adopt without realizing it. Like they should just be able to know how I'm feeling.
Yes.
They should basically mind reading, like stuff like that. Or honestly, like if you're having a really tough conversation, like with your mom or something, like your mom is also just your parent is also just a person, like also just trying to get through life. But in your head, you're like, they're my parent. They should know, you know, they're my parent. They should be the bigger person, like stuff like that. And so I think sometimes reminding yourself, like, this is just another human that I care about having a relationship with.
Yeah.
And somewhere in the back of my brain, I'm putting all these expectations on them that can kind of be unfair.
Yeah.
I feel like that's also a good like mindset shift to start with and be like, okay,
Definitely.
what expectations am I putting on them that are not really fair?
Yes, absolutely. I think another tip that could go along with this first like trick, I guess, or first how to is whenever you are kind of figuring out what's going on and figuring out if they're on a pedestal and reminding yourself that you just care a lot, I think it could be helpful to write down how you're feeling, whether that's in a journal or in a notes app or even talking about it with a friend. I think sometimes that can bring a lot of clarity and can really like settle down your thoughts whenever you can put it all into one place of whether it's like, okay, this is how I've been feeling this way, this way, this way. This is why I've been feeling like this way, this way, this way. Or like, these are moments when it's happened. Because I know for a lot of people, it's like in conversation, you kind of blank. And it's like, I actually don't remember anything.
And they're like, what do you mean by that? And you're like,
yeah, I don't really know. I have actually used this method before of like having the notes app because I'll usually just do it in my phone because, you know, my mind's racing. So my fingers are racing and I'm like, blah, blah, blah. But it really does help me because I feel like it also helps me keep the conversation on track and not go into other things that we're not talking about, or not go into like, oh no, but you did this one time, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think it helps. It's almost like an outline, basically.
Yeah.
Like, I make an outline sometimes if I'm feeling really startled and really like frazzled. But I have used it before in the conversations where I'm like, okay, this was the next thing I wanted to talk about. And be like, B, it's blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I think that can be really helpful, especially if you do have like racing thoughts like I do, or like whenever you're deep in that kind of a thought spiral, it does help to get them on paper or to get them written down so you can really see the web and like kind of clarify for yourself how you're actually feeling.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. Would you say you're an external processor?
Yes. I think that I process a lot, or I think a lot internally. Like my brain just never shuts up and it's so exhausting. But I think that in order for me to actually figure things out and to actually like
understand what the thoughts mean.
Yes. And to really, like clarity, basically, I do have to externally process it.
Yeah. I think that that's a really good tip for people like that, because I'm an external processor too. Like I a lot of the time when I talk about something, that's when I actually realize how I'm feeling. And because we've talked about this a lot before, but sometimes I feel like I don't know how I'm feeling until it's like out there in the open. Like,
and you're like, oh.
Yeah. That's actually a big thing with Enneagram 2s is they like repress their feelings without meaning to, because they're absorbing all the feelings of the people around them and trying to adjust their feelings accordingly. And so I do think it's a really good tip, and I have not done this, but I should do it in the future, because sometimes, especially for external processors, the person that you're feeling so hurt by is the person you would normally externally process with. But you can't externally process with them because it's about them. Yeah. And what, like, the thing that you would process, like, the processing is messy. Yes. And like getting from the point of like, I'm having all these feelings to, oh, this is why I'm feeling
this is what it actually means.
Yeah, that is messy and could be like kind of, you know, you could unintentionally hurt their feelings.
Yes, it can be hurtful sometimes, especially when you don't know and like you're trying to unspiral the thoughts. Sometimes, like, I literally think of my thoughts sometimes as like a freaking like a rigatoni noodle, and it's like all together, and I'm like, if I could just straighten it out, then I would know point A to point B. But unfortunately, there's so many curves.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, no, I like that tip a lot. And I think that's a lot of good like pre-work before actually having the conversation. Yes.
Once you do have the actual conversation, this is where you go into step 2, is choosing a good setting. So the keyword here is choosing. So don't just go into the conversation the moment you feel it. Don't have the conversation after 9 p.m. You know, I always say thoughts after 9 p.m. are not real. Sleep on it. Give it some time. So yeah, you can choose when and where you're having these conversations. Don't have them while you're picking up your kid from school. That's not going to be good. Don't have them over the phone on the lunch break. Like, that's not going to be helpful.
Or like letting them bubble up when you're at a restaurant with your friends and like Jared finally says something to me that's just the last straw because I haven't talked to him about this or whatever. And then we make everybody uncomfortable because I'm like, well, you always do this.
Like, and there's no way that's going to be productive. Ever.
No, exactly. So I feel like being intentional about we're gonna have this conversation at this time at this place.
Yes, and making sure you have enough time. To like really get into it. Make sure you don't have to stop and start. Like really give it the moment that it deserves.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think that this is where we fall into the trap of like in the heat of the moment we try to have these conversations that have been boiling in our head for so long, and that person has no clue. And only like flames can come from that. It's just terrible. I will say most recently when I had this conversation with Jared, I waited until Thursday nights we sit at the table. We should every night, but we don't. But Thursday nights we sit at the dinner table and like eat together. Yeah. And I waited. I had been like kind of feeling these weird feelings and thinking about it for a couple of days. And I was like, okay, like I'm going to wait until we're sitting across from each other. Like I can look in his eyes and like we're calm. Nobody else is around, whatever. And
the
that
time together was intentional.
Yes. And I felt like that just made such a huge difference compared to, honestly, like we have a lot of deep conversations when we take our walks, but, and I had thought about bringing up on one of our walks, but then I realized it would be an easy place for me to get my feelings hurt again, because if Edward tugs on the leash and like Jared gets distracted, then all of a sudden I'm making that something about he's not listening to me or something like that. You know? And so I was like, okay.
There's also almost like a deadline at the walks. It's like you get home, are we done?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that was something that was really top of mind for me after we had that conversation. And I was like, we need to talk about this on the podcast.
Yeah.
I was like, people need to do this.
Yes. No, it's a really good idea. I think it's so funny. Mason and I used to have our really serious talks or whatever, because we lived in Columbia and we would drive back to Kansas City a lot. And that's like an 1.5-hour drive. And I feel like we would always wait for our really big talks on our Columbia drives.
Oh, that's funny.
And like they were always great because you can't get out of the car.
Yeah.
You can't really yell at each other in the car. No. But also, I will say, I don't know if I'd hype him up too much, but Mason's really good at not arguing, which is funny because it's like more instinct for me to argue. Like, I think it's like, I don't know if that's just what I saw a lot or that's just how you think about arguments and fights or whatever, is like actually fighting.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be like that. So like we have never actually yelled at each other, which is kind of crazy because it's been a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, we used to have our talks in the cars, which would be so funny. But now whenever I do know that like we're going to have a pretty big setting, I do, and like, or a pretty big conversation. And even on his end, we'll wait until we know, like, I mean, sometimes I won't know it's coming, but like, we'll wait until we have the intentional time together.
Yeah.
And we're not on our phones. I'm not in the middle of watching a TV show. I didn't just get home from work. Like we're not about to run out the door to see family.
Yeah. Yeah. And dear God, don't text about it.
No.
Like, I think that that's a big thing, especially with when you're having, like, you want to have a conversation with, like, I was saying, a parent or like a really close friend or something like that. You need to find a time that you two can just be alone together.
Yes.
And not text about it. You can talk, like, you can call them and set aside a specific time to call them. That would be okay too. But I just feel like that's another thing. Like, if you're texting about it, then you're probably doing that because you don't actually want to face it. And like, you want to say things that you wouldn't say if you were in person or on the phone. Yes.
Texting is really tricky. I know I just had a really serious conversation with somebody who's really important in my life. And I remember while we were like kind of texting about it, I didn't want to actually text about what like I wanted to talk to them about, but I also didn't want to do one of those whole like, can we talk? And like kind of things, because that's not helpful for anybody either. But it was just kind of like, yeah, these are kind of the things I would like to talk about, but I think it's too hard to do over text because there's so much miscommunication over text.
Yeah.
You can never read how the other person means it to go. There's always a typo.
Yeah.
There's always some type of typo that changes everything. And then for this specific conversation, one of the texts did not go through from me. Like it did not go through to the other person. So it was like a very huge miscommunication. And whenever we were actually able to meet up about it, they were like, okay, what did you mean about this? And I was like, oh, like I said this. And they're like, I did not get that. And I was like, I said that. And I was like, I'm so sorry you didn't get it. But like that, I definitely said that. And like, so I was like, this is why I don't want to do things over text because it never works.
Yeah.
And so I was really glad that we did get to meet up about it and like actually figure things out and actually have a really great productive conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So think about where and when you might be doing this, when you have enough time and whatnot. And then step 3 is actually asking them if you can talk to them about something. Like, we don't want to blindside our loved ones.
Yes.
We don't want to, I don't know, like sit down at dinner and be like, so, but you know, like it's kind of like, hey, can I talk to you about something? You know, whatever. I do get what you mean. Like, can we talk? Like, it's kind of ominous.
It's so ominous.
But at the same time, like, I do feel like it gives that person the opportunity to mentally get in a good space.
Yes.
Like,
mine's over text. I feel like if you say, can we talk over text?
Yeah.
Nobody likes that because then you have to wait 5 minutes for the person to respond. You're just sitting there thinking, oh my God, what did I do?
Yeah.
So no, in person, I do think saying something is very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because otherwise, if you just go right into it, how is a person not supposed to be defensive?
Yeah.
Because they feel like they're being attacked.
Yeah, absolutely. And they were just sitting there la-di-da in their brain and
having a good time.
They had no idea that you're stewing in your brain.
Yes.
You know? So
yes. I will oftentimes ask Mason if I can talk to him about something serious. I'm like, or I'll say like, hey, are you in a good headspace right now to kind of talk about something kind of big? Or like, and it doesn't have to be about the relationship. It can be about money. It can be about plans. It can be about just things that might have a lot of strings attached and emotions attached to it. Yeah. I'm like, hey, like, let me know when you're in a good headspace to talk about this. And typically he's like, yeah, I'm good. But sometimes he'll be like, okay, yeah, I'm actually like, trying to make plans with my friends real quick. And like, I just know that they're going to be blowing up my phone. Can you give me like 10 minutes? I'm like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I do that because I know I would like the courtesy of it. Cause sometimes I'm really not there and I'm like, dude, I'm exhausted or like, I just want to watch my TV show. And I'm like, please, like, so sometimes he'll ask me and I'll be like, yes, I would love to talk about whatever's on your mind. Can you give me like 20 minutes? Like, can you let me take a shower first or like something like that? And so that way, I don't know. I actually really like
that's really, really smart. And especially when you mentioned the phone thing, because I feel like when you have a conversation and you start to talk to your partner or loved one or whoever about it, and they're kind of like caught up in something on their phone, then you can feel really hurt by that.
Yes.
But it's like, they were already texting their friends, making plans, and like in the
or like they got a work call, like they're still on the clock. Yes. Yeah, like the world doesn't stop around you, even though you're ready for it too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know for Jared, he has Slack on his phone. For work, and that's something that sometimes sometimes my impression, if I'm feeling really high emotions about something, if he's on his phone, blah blah blah, I'm like, what the hell is on your phone? That is way more important than whatever I'm talking about. But it's really just like he legitimately is just responding to his boss's Slack message. Yeah. And that's not fair of me to just assume that he can drop his work Slack message to talk about whatever weird feeling I'm having right now. I shouldn't say weird, but whatever
emotion you're going
whatever heightened emotion I'm having right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's better to wait or ask and if there's like a good time. Yeah. So I think that's a great tip.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know where, I think I started doing it because I hated talking about money and we would always have to talk about money and it would always be at like 10 p.m. And I'd be like, dude, I would love to talk to you about this, but I am feeling way too stressed out because it's so late and I cannot talk about money right now. And I'd be like, can we please talk about this tomorrow? But then if you are going to put it off, you have to bring it back up and it's got to be within like 12 hours or something.
Yeah. It's not fair to be like, no, I can't, I'm not ready to talk about that right now.
Yeah. And then never bring it back up. Yeah. No, I would never do that. And if that ever happened, I would be like, okay, well, you lost your privilege of me asking you about your headspace. Oh, funny. The next thing that we want you to do is know what result you are looking for. Yeah. Know why you are going into the conversation. Know what you want out of the conversation. And know what you want that person to take from the conversation and give you from the conversation.
Yes, I think that this is key.
Yes.
Because when we go into arguments or conversations, deep combos, willy-nilly, without any clue of what we're actually looking for, we can't get the result we want because we don't know what result we want.
Yeah, so you're just going to still feel unsettled.
Yes, exactly. So I feel like I know you and I were talking about a conversation that you had to have with someone not too long ago. And I was like, okay, what is like the ideal scenario here? Like, would you, if in the ideal scenario, would this person apologize? Would this person say that they were going to do this in the future? Would this person, validate your feelings or like tell you that you're right? Like what? Because honestly, all of those things are things that we want sometimes. Yeah. And that's how I felt like when I was talking to Jared, truthfully, I wasn't like expecting him to be like, yeah, I've been a terrible husband or like anything like that.
Right.
Or
you don't want that either.
Yeah. Or even to say sorry. I truly just wanted him to like acknowledge my feelings and then be like, okay, yeah, like I'll be a little bit more intentional with that. And then he has been since, and it's been great. Like I've felt, and honestly, sometimes like we just want a almost like sounding board.
Mhm.
And so, or them to just hear what we're feeling.
Yeah.
Without like attacking them. You know?
Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't need anything. You just need to be heard.
Yeah. So you really just need to like figure that out before you go into it.
Yes. I actually remember you asking me like, okay, what are you looking for out of this conversation? And I remember being like, that's a great question. I don't really know because I felt so pent up and I felt so anxious about it and I had no idea how it was going to go and blah, blah, blah. And I remember you asking me and me like really having to take a second to be like, okay, what do I want? How do I want to move forward? Because I mean, this person's in my life and I want them to be in my life and I love them so much. And if I don't have a clear idea of what I'm looking for, this will go nowhere.
Yeah.
So I remember you saying that and me being like, okay, what do I want? And I was able to figure it out and like put it into words to you and like externally process it.
Yeah.
And it helped a lot.
Yeah. I think I noticed that, or I realized this is such a key step for the first time whenever one of my girlfriends was having a lot of issues with her in-laws. And she was talking to me about it and she was saying like, because they were going to have a conversation soon. And she was like, I really am just trying to figure out what it is that, like, what would make me feel good leaving this situation. Because right now I don't know what that is. But obviously I'm not going to feel good leaving the situation if I don't know
how to feel good.
what would make me feel good.
Yeah.
So, and I've thought about that a lot ever since, like, okay, what would make me feel good leaving this intense conversation or whatever.
That's a great thing to ask yourself.
Yeah.
It really is because it does give you a lot more clarity on where you want to go with it. It can help you focus in on what you actually need to be talking about. Because I think that with arguments or conversations a lot, they can turn into bigger than they need to be, or they can turn into battles because you don't have a clear focus. And like you get defensive. You do. When someone's coming at you and telling you that you're not doing something well enough or you're not, like there's something that you're lacking in. Yeah. It can be it can feel hurtful. It does not mean that it is hurtful, but it can feel hurtful.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I think really figuring out what you're wanting to talk about and what you're wanting from it is so key.
Yes. So honestly, all of those like steps 1 through 4 are kind of like prep work. Like you got to do the prep work before the convo. And then step 5 is kind of like actually having the convo, little tips that we have for how to make it better. So one of the first things that I think is important is first turning it back on yourself and thinking like, what can I own here? So for instance, and honestly, like I would say that this whole step in my head is like looking at this conversation as more of a lens on you than on them. Because I feel like initially when like you were just saying, like you kind of pit yourself against that person whenever you are feeling a certain way. And rather than like feeling really against them and like, this is what you're doing to me. Yeah. Making it kind of about yourself and feeling like, okay, what can I own here? I guess just like what kinds of things can I own up to? For instance, like when I had this conversation with Jared, I was like, look, I am very aware that I could just be feeling like really insecure, or I could just be feeling like really high emotions from work and it's kind of bleeding in here or, you know, that sort of thing. Yeah. Or, you know, if you're having this conversation with a good friend or something, like telling them like, this is probably like way more about me than it is about you, but I have kind of been feeling this way. And I don't know if that is something that you've been feeling at all, but like, you know, just, kind of going into it, I feel like softer, I guess. Yes,
I think that is key. Like going into conversations gently and like making sure you're using constructive wording, like never hurtful wording, never like the you are doing this, you like blah, blah, blah. Instead, kind of, I don't want to say like putting it on you because I don't want you to be blaming yourself for ways that you're feeling, but like saying things like, I know I've been feeling very stressed out about this, so it could be heightened emotions, but blah, blah, blah. Like, I do think that can be really good instead of just out of the blue being like, yeah, you've been really like this. And they're like, what? No, I haven't. Or like, what are you talking about? Like, I think that can be really important.
Well, in the journaling thing that you said before, like if you already know specific actions that are kind of hurting your feelings, like you can say, I've been really, really stressed with work, so I'm probably just taking this more personally than I normally would.
Mhm.
But lately you've been
not spending very much time with me.
Yeah, lately I've noticed that you've been spending a lot more time in your office than you have with me.
Mhm.
And it's starting to make, like, I'm starting to feel kind of disconnected or like a little bit lonely. Like,
Mhm.
you're not dismissing your feelings of loneliness or disconnection,
Right.
but you are softening that, like, and you're not blaming yourself for it, but you're just acknowledging that, like, hey, I might be feeling this more intensely right now, and it might not be that different even than like normal.
Yes.
But it's something that is affecting me right now. And that person can be like, oh, okay, well, then I'll spend less time in my office.
Yeah.
You know?
I do think that the verbiage and the way that you would go in a conversation like that does help take the blame off of both parties. Like, it's like, I'm not blaming you, I'm not blaming myself, but here is how I'm feeling. That's a big thing that I'll do occasionally, where if it's something that I'm like not actually that upset over, or it's something that I'm like, I won't lose sleep over this, but I do think you should know how that comment made me feel. Or I do think that you should know that I did not appreciate what you just did. Like, saying things like that. I'll have conversations like that before with like Mason or something, or like with you. And I'll kind of start it off with being like, yeah, I want you to know, like, this is not actually a huge deal. And like, I'm not that upset about it, but I do want you to know so that going forward, like, it doesn't get to that point. And I do think that can help to take a lot of the pressure off. But then I know I've had conversations with Mason like that before, where he kind of immediately feels still like defensive.
Yeah.
And then I have to be like, okay, again, I'm not upset. I'm not upset with you. Like, I don't think that you personally did anything wrong. It's just that I did not appreciate it, or I did not like it. And then, so I think that kind of reiterating, like, hey, this is not a huge thing. I'm not mad. I'm not angry at you. You did not personally hurt me. Like, but here's how.
But I didn't like it, and I would love for it to not happen again.
Yeah. I do think kind of like reiterating that in conversations can be really helpful. And then if it is something that was really hurtful, then if they are getting really defensive, then kind of taking back the power and being like, hey, listen, I know that you're feeling like this right now, and I know you're feeling like I'm kind of coming at you, but this is about the way that my emotions are feeling, and this is about how this was hurtful to me. And I think kind of like taking back the power and just reminding them why you're having the conversation. It's not to attack them. It's to help you and like help you guys get better again.
Yeah.
And, like, kind of fix that up.
Absolutely. Do you remember in elementary school whenever they would have someone like say sorry or whatever, and they had like I statements?
Yes.
I think about this so much. I'm like, why are adults so bad at conflict? We learned it. We learned it in kindergarten, man. But like the whole like using I statements instead of you statements is actually it's golden advice.
It is.
Because when you are in a conversation like that and you're saying like, I'm feeling kind of lonely, that's different than being like, you're making me feel lonely.
Yeah. Or you're ignoring me.
Like,
you're abandoning me.
Yes.
It's like, no, I'm not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, and that's the gut response when someone says you're doing this. You're like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
Or, well, you're doing this.
Yep.
And then it's like a battle of who's doing the worst thing.
Yep.
Whereas like, if I say I'm feeling this way, then they can't really be like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. They could be like, oh, well, I'm kind of feeling this way. But I don't know. I just have found that when I'm just honest and honestly, like, I feel this way sometimes when I have conflict with people and it doesn't go well, where I'm like, I feel like that would have just been better if instead of them being like in the heat of the moment, if they would have just said like, honestly, I'm just feeling, my feelings are kind of hurt, you know?
Yeah.
Like, because I think that that's actually what was happening, but instead they were like throwing around all these insults and stuff. And it's like, can you just like, I would feel so much more inclined to make this better with you if you would just be like, my feelings are kind of hurt, or like, honestly, I'm just kind of feeling insecure about that, or I'm just feeling kind of lonely, or I'm feeling kind of disconnected or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, that is such a softer, more approachable way to talk with someone about something serious than to just go into it right when you have the heightened emotions.
Yeah.
And you are way more likely to hurt feelings, insult people, start arguments. Like
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know.
I feel like this episode is going to be like a how to take really serious topics and really serious conversation or really serious feelings and having conversations versus arguments.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
it really is like arguments are so avoidable. We just have so many human emotions
Yes.
that can be so hard to take out of it. And that's why all this prep work's important.
Yes.
My last tip is going to be like the number one therapist tip, but it's the don't use definitive statements like the never or the always.
You always do this.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah, because I'm going to use a definitive word, but that's never true. Like it is never true that your spouse has never done this for you before. Like that can't be true kind of thing. Now it could be something very specific. Like you've never run me a bath before. Okay, sure. But why are we trying to talk about that? Like, you know what I mean? But I think that is really important because that can feel super like, oh yeah, give me an example. Give me a context. Like that's not true. And then you guys just kind of fight about semantics at that point.
Yes.
And it's like, crap, this isn't what the conversation's about, but now it's become about that.
Yeah.
And so, I would say really try to focus hard on the verbiage you're using, the words you're using, and make sure you are not using definitive words that are hurtful and can be proven opposite because then you just look like an idiot.
Yeah. Also, when you're using those kinds of terms, all you're doing is attacking.
Yeah.
I can't believe that you're actually trying to cover any good ground with the person sitting across from you or that you're talking to if you are using those kinds of words. Because at that point, you just want to fight.
Yeah. Yep. You just want to fight. That's so funny. I keep thinking of like all these conversations I've had with Mason over the years, but I get really bad tunnel vision is how I say it, where when things are good, they're good. And when they're bad, they're bad. Mm-hmm. And I have trouble remembering like what's outside of the emotion I'm feeling right then. I think that's why journaling and like external processing helps me a lot. But I remember there was this one time where Mason and I were literally on our way to go to a library date back in Columbia. We were going to like choose books for each other, like blindly and be like, okay, here's your book that you're going to read. It was so fun. But literally on the way to the date, I remember saying like, I just feel like we're not spending any romantic time together. And he's like, we're on our way to a date right now. And I was like, you're so right. We are. And I just remember thinking it was really funny because I had said like, we never do this. Or you and I have had conversations about this before. I feel like you were the first person to be like, Bailey, that's not true. Like we just did this last week, or like you were just feeling good about this last week. And just because you're not feeling good about it today does not make that true. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. You're right. So I don't know.
It's really hard whenever you are in a moment of feeling hurt or feeling lonely or feeling disconnected or whatever. You're in a moment of that intense emotion. It's really hard for you to not apply that to everything.
Yes.
And you're like, actually, it's all up in flames. Actually, nothing good has ever come of this whole entire thing. We should call it now.
Call it.
And it is really hard to do that. And I feel like that's why going through these steps is so important. And like, honestly, first step, why do I feel this way? Because I love this person so much and I care so much about my relationship with them. Like that I feel like that starting with that alleviates so much of that like nasty feeling that is going on.
Yes.
And then going through these like 5 steps of getting to the conversation and like how to actually have that are really helpful. So
definitely.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Well, I do feel like this is kind of, I mean, we talked about deep things, but we really want you guys to leave with this with like an actual how-to, actual tips, actual little things that you can remember the next time that you are feeling like there's a buildup to like a conversation that you have to have with your mom or you have to have with your grandma or your best friend or your spouse or whomever.
Yeah. And also you might have to have a lot of conversations like this before it starts being the norm and before it starts being the usual. Like, like it's not to say that you're going to take all these tips and you're going to apply them flawlessly. It's not to say that your partner is not going to respond really poorly still. Yeah. Or it's not to say that it's not still going to be an instinct to have a reaction. But it's a good process and it's good things to learn. And I almost think of it as like gentle parenting. Yeah. Like we have to gentle parent those around us, especially whenever you feel really strongly about something. It's like, let's talk about it. Yeah. Let's make this work. Like we're not storming off. We're not crying. Like we're just figuring this out together. Yes. But I don't want people to listen to this and be like, oh yeah, easier said than done, because of course it is. But It
And
might take some time.
Yeah, and we don't apply them flawlessly either.
No, I was just saying I probably had my first good conversation with Mason a year ago. We have been together going on 8 years and have had a great relationship.
I mean, to be honest, that's what prompted this episode for me was I felt like this conversation went really well. And I was like, wow, took a long time to get there.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like, but here are all the little things that I've picked up along the way in conflict with friends and conflict with you and conflict with mom and conflict with anybody that have made it just a little bit better now. And so they're like things that we should share.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I loved it. I feel good about it. I'm like, wow, what a great conversation.
Yes. Well, we will see you all next week or talk to you all next week.
Thanks for tuning in. Cheers.